So there I am in the hospital, and I'm improving, especially with that diet, and I get to go into Liverpool on a pass every so often. And I'm learning a lot of things about England from the guys who have already been there. I said, you know, where can I stay overnight? I get a pass. I said, well, they have bed and breakfast. A lot of the people, they'll give you a bed and a breakfast, and they'll charge you a little bit of money for it. And then I got into English language, you know, expressions and so on. I said, and you can tell them what time you want to be awakened in the morning, but don't be surprised if they say to you, I'll knock you up in the morning. So sure enough, the first time I went in for a pass, a weekend pass in Liverpool, I got to hear the Liverpool Philharmonic Orchestra, which was one of the top recording classical orchestras, and better than that, their clarinet chair was occupied, I can't think of his name right now, but by a clarinetist who was teaching Benny Goodman more than Benny Goodman already knew about classical clarinet performance. And I would go there, and it cost 10 pence to get in for people in uniform. It cost 10 pence to get in to hear the orchestra. And that would buy me a seat right on the first row. I could sit wherever I wanted. And I think even once I had to sit on the stage near the orchestra, off to the side or around the back or somewhere. And because there was such a big demand, you know, but they accommodated us that way. Then I could go to the pubs, but I wasn't allowed to drink alcohol because of my condition, the doctor said. So I would drink lemonade. It was a lemon-flavored soda. It was awful, but it gave me an excuse to be in the pub and hear the people and watch them. And then I'd go to a bed and breakfast. I remember, sure enough, this old lady said, okay, good, you know, we'll have this and this, and I'll bring you your tea. I'll knock you up in the morning, and I'll bring you your tea. And that's what they do. They would knock on the door, wake you up, you say, I'm up, and they'd bring you in hot tea, and you drink that while you're still in bed. And then you go down and get something for breakfast, and so on and so forth. And
in Britain, did you receive additional training before you were shipped to France?
No, because I was in the hospital. So, see, here's what happened. I got the impression, or I was told, I had been in the hospital about a month, that I would have to be there another month. Now, I went to the Red Cross Club also on one of these weekend things, passes, and lo and behold, I see my friends from the 106th Division. And they are not only my friends from being in the 106th Division, these guys I had basic training with way back at Fort McClellan, and then through Auburn, and then in the 106th Division. So I felt very much at home with them. And I said, what are you guys doing here? And they said, well, we're at a Reppel depot, a replacement depot. And they said, hey, here's your chance to come back with us. What do you know, they had asked me what I was doing. And I said, well, no. I said, my outfit is in France already. And they're in Cherbourg. And I would want to go back with them because that's where I really feel most at home now. And I don't like the idea of being a replacement soldier because I remember reading that the rate of death among replacements is much higher than the ones who are already part of the organization, not because they necessarily were being given the worst jobs or anything like that, but they didn't fit in as well, and there's more chance for errors, mistakes, and what. Well, as it turned out, as you may know from the histories, when the Battle of the Bulge occurred a couple months later, the 106th Division was on the line, along with the 28th Division, which is the Pennsylvania Division. And both of them suffered terrible defeats. Of the 3 regiments of the 106th Division, one, the regiment I happened to have been in, 424th, I think, was the one that was in reserve. So they came off a little better, but the other 2 regiments, they were just horribly hit. And I learned later from Al Kraus and Ernie Kilgus, who I mentioned, when we were all at Penn together, they said, you know, a lot of the Jewish guys in the outfit were just killed out of hand. When they were taken prisoner, they just shot them immediately. They said, so they're really lucky on 2 counts there. And all right, so I went back to the, I met a girl while I was on one of those passes, and she invited me to her home, a very modest house in Liverpool. Her father worked as a cake baker, I guess, for Lyons, which is a big chain similar to Horn and Hardart was in Philadelphia and New York. This was all over England, Lyons. And they had, she had a few siblings, and her mother and her father were very, very nice to me, let me stay over there. And she and I, we didn't go out together. There's no place to go. She worked nights in a defense factory, a night shift. So I visited them after the hostilities were over. I got back to Liverpool again and visited with them. She eventually married some guy from Tennessee, and I never heard from them. So that was after the war. So, knowing that I wanted to get back to my outfit, I got a message one day that my lieutenant and some other guys from my outfit were there at the hospital or had reached the hospital, and they were looking for me. And sure enough, what happened was that some of our equipment had never gone over to France, the equipment that arrived in England. And they were sent back from Cherbourg to England to get that equipment, including a couple trucks, or a few trucks. So they came to visit me in the hospital. And I said to my lieutenant, get me out of the hospital because I want to go back with the outfit. So he talked with the captain, the medic in charge of me, and the medic spoke to me. And he said, look, for you to get out of the hospital, you'll have to go before a review board. So you better know what to say to them so they'll let you out of the hospital. He said, you've only been here a month, and you're supposed to be here another month before you could go back, because of the degree of problem you've had. I was in very bad shape, it turned out. They went by what they call the icteric index, and mine was something like 108. And they said that it's extremely high. In other words, there should be a fatal case. The guy who had the bed next to mine was considered a fatal case. He was sent back to the States. So we didn't, you asked, did we take drills there and so on? No, but we took marches. And the marches were without equipment, without any rifles or packs or anything. But For somebody in the hospital, they were taxing and the weather was lousy. And I had been on several marches of several miles, but you're supposed to, the doctor told me, when they ask you how many miles of marching did you do, it better be 25. I said, okay. And if they ask you how many weeks have you been under this setup or that setup, you know, you say this, you say that. And that's how I got out of the hospital. And so I was able to join my lieutenant and the few other guys that we were traveling together. And we had to go from Liverpool down to different places, 2 places in Wales, 1 place, Glastonbury in England, and work our way down eventually to Southampton. And that was the port where we got onto a freight ship, one of these wartime ships called a Liberty ship, or they had another kind, a Victory ship. And that was, I think, the first group of ships to go up the Seine River from Le Havre to Rouen. That's another story. I don't know if we have time for that. It's not a very long one.
We've got 10 minutes on here.
Okay.
Oh, wait a minute. Let me check that. Yes, it looks like 10 minutes.
So I remember on that trip to get to Southampton, stopping at one GI military post, and I think it was Thanksgiving Day. And wouldn't you know, they had roast turkey and cranberry sauce and sweet potatoes and all these good things, pumpkin pie, in abundance. And I hadn't eaten like that in months. So we had a good time just having this Thanksgiving Day dinner. It wasn't part of a big celebration. They just happened to have it there in their mess. And then we got on this ship, and the accommodations were terrible. It was a freight ship, you know. We were down in the hold, no portholes, no nothing. And again, there were these cots with crisscrossing ropes and very little by way of any kind of there's no mattress, just folded blankets. And there are odds and ends like us. I mean, other people who were bits and pieces of other organizations. It was not crowded at all. And there was a constant level of water, seawater on the deck in our hold. And there were dogs, police dogs that they were bringing over somewhere. Or maybe they were part of the ship crew, I don't know. And their droppings were everywhere and that. So you can imagine what this was like. And to eat, we got field rations, meaning they were either C rations or K rations. I think they were C rations. K rations were a step better. So I won't even describe them, not that much better. C rations were in the cans, and you might get a can of what they called spaghetti and meatballs. It'd be some kind of noodles and some little bit of tomato paste in there and some kind of chopped up meat, and a very low level of quality. And others would be maybe macaroni and cheese, you know, things like that. But then there were also other cans that would have some goodies in it. They'd have something I enjoyed very much. These were round cans about that big, half-pound size. And at the bottom would be compressed cold cereal made by some tile company, I remember, in New England, I think. And so it would be the ingredients of a cold cereal, some kind of grains and some kind of sugar and some kinds of powdered milk, all squeezed together and solidified. And you could eat it like a bar, only it wasn't like a bar. It was like a tile. And you could put water in from your canteen and chop it and stir it and eat it that way. But they would also have cans that had crackers in it, like heavy-duty soda crackers, more solid, and cigarettes, maybe 2 or 3, but I think more like 2 cigarettes in a pack, and some hard candies, perhaps, a couple hard candies, things of that sort. Well, the rations we got, we didn't get them in abundance. You know, we'd be giving them like every day, here's your bag of ration. All those cans with the cigarettes and the hard candies and the cookies or the cereal had been broken into, and the cigarettes were gone for sure, and the hard candies were gone for sure, and some of the other things were left to some extent. And that was the crew that did that. It was a British civilian crew. But here are these ships, and they're the first to go up the Seine. It took us a couple days to get up the Seine River and out at Rouen. And at Rouen, I was told, now remember there was a few of us, maybe 4 or 5 of us all together from my outfit, counting me. At the port, they're told, well, your trucks are over there, so you guys wait there, and you'll get the signal to take off. I'm sitting in the truck. They say, okay, Roth, you stay here, and we're going to go get the other trucks, and we'll stay there. And they're a long time waiting. Nobody comes back, see? And somebody is calling out orders all of a sudden, blowing a whistle, and it says, rank number 1, roll them. No, not roll them, turn them over. And that means turn it on. They had almost a built-in key there, a key stuck in the thing. And I'm the only guy in this truck. I don't know where the other guys are. I don't know where we're supposed to go. And it's a whole big, like, think of a big parking lot, just full of loading area. And then the guy yells, you know, row 7, turn them. Oh, it's beginning to blink. I turn it, and then he says, roll them. Once before, I had tried a truck like that, and I got hung up on an elevated structure. They had runway planks of metal, and the dimension was different. And it just stayed on the turned up part. And if I had to back it back down, if I had gone the least bit out, the truck would have fallen between those things. That's all I knew about this truck, and I knew something about double clutching. Do you know what that is? You clutch and you shift to neutral, and you clutch again. You let it out and you clutch again to shift to the gear you want. And I didn't know, a 3/4 ton truck is nothing. And yet I think it required double clutching. So here I go off, and we're driving, and we're driving on a road that's getting steeper and steeper, and the big vans, gigantic Air Force vans are coming by, and you have to squeeze in between and this and that. You can't see around them. You don't know where you're going. And it got dark, and I'm still driving, and then we drove from Le Havre, I think, to Rouen. Rouen is too far upstream for those ships to go. And I said Rouen before. It should have been Le Havre. And I got out there, and all I could do was drive around. And I'm still not used to driving this truck. I don't know where the switches are for anything. And asking, do you guys know of 291 FOB? Anybody see 291 FOB? And so on. And finally, I found somebody who knew where the locations were, and I found my group. And that night, and it was cold and it was all open out there in this field, and got something to eat, I guess. But that night, we drove, the regular driver, his name was Dwyer. He eventually got killed as serving as a driver when we were in action. And we drove all through Normandy there, and that's the first I saw of all the wreckage of the war at night. And all of a sudden, Dwyer says, "Hey, let's pick up these two women. We're out on a road somewhere, we don't know where. And there's two women want to get a lift." And so he picks up the two women. He's driving. I says, "Not my idea." And he has 5 children, a wife and 5 children. And I don't know where the one woman sat. The other woman sat on my lap. There were only 2 seats up front. And she sat on my lap. And we drove quite some distance before they wanted to get off. And they got off. And then we drove on, and eventually, I guess we drove into Cherbourg, where our outfit was detailed as in effect, an MP outfit in the middle of a velodrome, a motorcycle race course just outside the city, filled with pyramid tents inside and mud, pyramid tents and mud all over, and our little kitchen set up under a set of permanent grandstands, permanent bleachers, like concrete. Everything was concrete. And I was put on sort of a special duty setup. I didn't have to do what all the other guys were doing, which is going out to meet prisoner of war trains and getting on the trains at that particular point and going with them to other points where they were loaded off into stockades or brought to our place and loaded off there. And but I had to keep the coffee makers going all night because our guys were going in and out, and other people were, at all hours of the night. And I had some interesting experiences there, but I don't know if we have enough time. I drove that weapons carrier from the ship's landing place on to some much higher elevations, and eventually wound up at some assembly point near Rouen, and then found my buddies, and Fred Dwyer became the driver of the weapons carrier that I was previously driving, and I was the passenger. And on the way to Cherbourg, we had to pass the city of Caen, if you pronounce it that way, C-A-E-N, and that is well known as being one of the most beat up places in that Normandy campaign. That was my first sight of a sizable town. It's an important historic town, very important in the Norman invasion, I think, of England. With all these buildings, old buildings just smashed to pieces. And eventually we arrived at Cherbourg at this velodrome where they used to hold motorcycle races, but was taken over by outfits like ours, the 291st FOB, and our outfit was given the job of accompanying German prisoners, German soldiers who had recently been taken prisoner, and bringing them in from outlying places, bringing them in to the Cherbourg area. Because I had been in the hospital and was not fully recovered from the symptoms of jaundice, I did not share that function of being an MP, a guard on those trips, but instead I had to stay every night all night long under the stands of the racetrack and keep the coffee urns hot and loaded, and dish out peanut butter sandwiches to the guys as they came in off duty. And we slept in pyramidal tents that housed about a half dozen guys, maybe 8, on wooden floors, wooden platforms, shallow platforms that were made, and the rest was all mud. And if you wanted to get out to the latrine, and it was cold, so I would run as fast as I could. The knee-high rubber boots I had gotten hold of, civilian things, would get stuck in the mud, and I'd go flying off barefoot in the mud. It was a mess, and it was a real mess because the rats lived under those wooden floors, those wooden decks. And they'd come out at night. In our pyramid tent, our group had a metal cabinet, the vertical cabinet like you might have in a kitchen, small shelves in there, but that's where we would keep our things that we didn't want the rats to get to, like edibles. All of us had some kind of candy bars or things of that sort, and we would keep them in that thing and keep it closed all the time. On the other hand, we knew the rats were circulating every night. And then I was sleeping on the floor because I was a latecomer. The others, some of them had cots. But I was maybe, if not the only one sleeping on the deck, then maybe 2 or 3 of us. And many of the others didn't sleep there every night because they were off on these travel assignments to bring back the prisoners. So I remember lying there at night and hearing the rats, and they're trying to get into the cabinet. And I would throw my shoes over in the dark and try to hit them or get them to scatter away. So they did, for the moment. Meanwhile, this would wake up other people in the tent, and one guy said he woke up one night and he heard this noise over near where I was sleeping on the floor, and he turned his flashlight on, and he could see a rat trying to push a can. It must have been an empty can, if it made noise, but trying to push a can over my head while I was sleeping. So I thought that was very funny. I wouldn't have thought it was funny if I had seen it myself, though. So that'll give you an idea of that place. But here are a couple incidents. If you can picture me under the stands there, it makes a nice cozy little chamber for where we have our food heating material machines of very simple types, and we would have the lines of German prisoners coming through, and to get something to eat in the morning as they were brought in. So they would have me along with others dishing out the food. So to picture the German soldiers coming past this little window, not a window, a counter with a large, somewhat large window effect opening there, and getting pancakes or whatever we were dishing out that day, French toasted bread, slapped into their eating kit, and holding out their canteen cup, metal canteen cup, for beverage. And we'd pour coffee in there. When along comes an especially meek and weak-looking German prisoner, so short that you can just about see his head above this high counter shelf dishing out the place, and he has gotten his French toast or pancakes, and I'm ladling hot syrup on it. And he holds up his canteen cup, not for coffee, he wants that syrup. And I figure to myself, what the hell does he want this syrup for? He must think it's very thin, and it isn't, it's fairly thick, and it's as hot as can be because it's been cooking and cooking and cooking. And it's the nature of this sugar-laden thing to be very, very hot. So, all right, you want it. I pour it in there, and he immediately takes it before I can stop him and to take a big gulp of it. And he takes a big gulp of it, and I swear his tongue must still be hurting today if he's still alive. So that was one little episode there in that place where I spent my nights. And another one I want to tell you about happened at night, about 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. Some FFI troops show up. That was the French freedom fighters. They came under General de Gaulle, and they were fighting against the Germans too in different places. And these 3 guys come in, they've got that patch on, and I had some French, you know, from my high school French, and they want to know, can they have something? Of course, I immediately give them coffee, and I cut some bread, but I don't have anything to put on the bread. I don't know what the cooks, our cooks, are expecting to use the next day for us, and this and that, and put me in a bad situation. But I remember nobody likes the peanut butter that we have. And we have peanut butter in 5-pound cans, gigantic olive drab, military colored, camouflaged cans. And I think finally we'll get rid of some of the peanut butter. And why didn't we like it? Because it was of such a consistency that no matter how carefully you tried to eat it, it would make your tongue stick to the roof of your mouth. And you couldn't really get your tongue off the roof of your mouth until you were swallowing practically all that peanut butter. So I figure, here's the chance. So I slice up some bread, and I get one of these cans open, and I dish out a big, big dollop on there, and I start to spread it on the bread. And the one Frenchman asks me, and this is all in French, what is that? What is that? And I said, oh, it's good, it's good. You'll like this. It's good, and it's good for you. Yes, but what is it? What is it? And I'm trying to think, do I know a word for peanut butter in French? No, I don't know a word for peanut butter. And do I know a word for nuts? Well, I think I do. I think it's something like noise, but I'm not sure. But I do know the word for butter. So I said to them, c'est un beurre américain, c'est comme beurre, oui, oui. I say, it's an American butter. And they look at me and I say, yes, it's a butter, yes, yes. And they look at each other and they take what I gave them. After all, they're hungry. And they take a big bite of it, and sure enough, their tongues stick to the roof of their mouth, and they didn't finish their peanut butter sandwiches. And I figured, the hell with you. You've had your chance, and that was that. And I guess that didn't help French-American situation, but they thanked me for the coffee anyhow. So that was that.
About what time was this?
About 3 o'clock in the morning.
I'm sorry, I meant date-wise.
What calendar
Yeah.
period? Well, it had to be sometime between Thanksgiving and the middle of December, because the beginning of December or the end of November, I think we were out of that velodrome. And when we went out of that velodrome, we got on the road, and this is another rat story. We had to stop to sleep somewhere, and we saw this big barn. And we stopped, and this was an active farm. Excuse me, maybe not as active as it would be if it were peacetime, but we got the instructions from our officers. They said, you go up in that barn, and you can sleep up in the loft if you find space up there, and we did. It was a big, big barn, and there was just a gigantic pile of grain up in the loft part of it. And we thought that was great because we could burrow down into this pile of grain. Now, we were all aware of the fact that if we go too far, we'll get smothered because moving around in the sleep or whatever might cause that stuff to just be a mudslide over us, although it's perfectly dry, but it's very mobile. But we managed to get in there, and that kept us warm, and we managed to keep our heads out of reach. We learned the next morning from guys who had been up and flashed their lights around that the thing was overrun with rats, and the rats were running over us because this is where they came to feast every night. So I should say they came to feast and feast, both, I imagine. Anyhow, we got out of there and we got back. The next morning we got back in our trucks and we went on and on through Normandy, and we came to a town. I may get the pronunciation wrong, because there is a town called Argyll, which is of some prominence in that Normandy area. And this town that we went to was a similar name. So I'll just have to refer to it as the place where we came, where there was a chateau, an old chateau, which had been changed over and used as military housing for the occupation troops that had been there from Germany. They had some slogans painted on the walls in German and this and that, but that's where we, at least my immediate group, my battery, the sound platoon, call it, from the battery where we were stationed. And it was nice to be there. It was good shelter. We didn't have too much contact with the local French, but there was some sort of an inn nearby, and we could go over there in the evenings and get some beer or even wine and watch the old guys in the town play dominoes. That's what they did mostly.
Now, I don't know if you mind jumping ahead, but where were you at the time of the German offensive? Okay,
I was just leading up to this. So, but I think I have to tell this little bit for linkage. From that town was a short distance to another town called, I'll say, not having looked it up recently, I'll say Sigy-en-Bray. It's like 3 words. Sigy in such and such an area. And we became friendly with the people in that town, and we decided that we would do something for these people because they were friendly to us. We could go to their cafe and get something to drink. I mean, like coffee or beer or wine, and play on their billiard table. They had a small billiard table, which is not exactly like ours, but we could play on that and this and that. And we said we would have a Christmas party for them. And they said that would be very nice. So they let us use their school auditorium building, which was a separate building with a little auditorium in there with, I don't know how many square feet, but maybe a total of 300 square feet or maybe 400, 500. And we did put on a nice party for them. We worked hard at it, and I was elected to be the translator. I had very limited French, really, remaining from my high school days, but I was able to use it to advantage. We got to the home of an old lady who lived just outside the center of the town, and she let us cut down a tree on her property, and we brought that back to the auditorium, and we made decorations that could be put on the walls of the auditorium. We got together with a local musician who played the piano, and I don't know if he had a friend who came along who played the drums, but his playing the piano was enough. He said he knew American music, and I think all he could play was Ain't She Sweet, and he would play that over and over again, and we told him, fine, he has it down pat. And then eventually we had the night of the party. And our mess sergeant, he was the reason I got I think that I got the yellow jaundice. His personal habits were very slovenly, and that carried over into his cooking. And a number of our people were hospitalized later on for yellow jaundice and hepatitis, they call it. And but his helper knocked himself out making donuts for the party. And so the night of the party came. But before the night of the party came, the night of the party was someday very close to Christmas, just before Christmas. But on the 16th of December, we had an alert. And the alert was, there's been a German attack on the troops, American troops in the East. And they're headed this way. So be prepared for German paratroops. And that was the 16th of December, which is the initial date of the Battle of the Bulge. It didn't end until January 22nd or 26th or something like that, toward the end of January. And we were in on the end of that. But of course, we were not affected by this rumor. The German paratroops did not come, and so on. And so the Christmas party was sort of a real celebration, but we knew that we had to go east now as a result of that battle. And during the party, I mean, I worked very hard on that party. I did a lot of the wall decorations. I did the translating. I did a lot of work with the pianist, humming and singing different songs to him to see if he could manage them. But he loved jazz, and he stuck with Ain't She Sweet. And during the party, the people came, and they enjoyed themselves, the local residents. And one of the fellas, one of the local young men who lived there, he came and he called me over, and he said he had a glass of Calvados for me. Calvados is what we would call Applejack. And that area there is known for their apples and their Applejack in Normandy. And I let the other guys in my immediate group, the guys who worked hard on the party, have firsts. at this glass full of Calvados. You know, it's real strong liquor, very strong, and very expensive, incidentally, at least here in this country. And by the time the glass got to me, after 3 or 4 or 5 guys had had some Calvados, there was nothing left. So this young fellow who knew me fairly well, he said, wait, and he ran home and he came back again with another glass full, and I drank the whole glass. I drank the whole, I took a little time, but I gulped it, and I drank that whole glass of Calvados, and I didn't need an overcoat after that or anything. Really enjoyed the rest of the party. But following that, we set about making little wood deck arrangements for our trucks that could reach from one of the benches that ran down the side, each side of the back, the bed of the truck, by putting wood cleats on the faces of those bench enclosures, we could put these wood platforms in there, and then we could sleep 2 or 3 guys under that, and maybe 4 guys on top of that, maybe 5 guys, because it stretched across the benches, you know, included the area of the benches. And that's how we made our way through France to get to Aachen, where we went into action, call it, on New Year's Eve. But before we left on our trucks, Christmas actually came to our town there, and we Jewish guys pulled the guard duty Christmas Eve, so as many of the other guys could go to the local, what passed for a cathedral, a large church. And I remember pulling double guard duty there that night, double the time, and having my overcoat on and as much clothing wrapped around me as I could. It was chilly. And one of our officers showed up with a bottle of champagne, and asked me to produce my canteen cup, and he poured a shallow bit in there. I had never had champagne up to that point, and I was expecting something that would taste just like ginger ale, because I thought it looked like champagne, and I think one of them had a slogan that their ginger ale back home, their ginger ale was the champagne of ginger ales, you know, and I was very disappointed when I did taste it. It was a dry champagne. It was not a sweet champagne, and I had expected otherwise. But I remember being touched by the appearance of a couple little kids who came by, and they were on their being taken to that church and for the Christmas Eve, and they had to wait, or I don't know if they were even accompanied, but they were very small kids, and their clothes were like nothing, no shelter at all against that weather, that temperature. So with my big overcoat, I managed to get them inside the skirt part of the overcoat and let them stand there and keep warm for a long time. So we arrived, as I say, a few days later. On the way, we stopped at the French town. Our convoy had to stop at a French town or a Belgian town. I think it was called Charleroi, Charles the King, or we would call it Charleroi. And the people in the town came out, and one man, lo and behold, had a bottle of cognac, and he poured me a cognac-sized glass of cognac, and that was terrific. And the people were really cheering us on, but then, you had to realize, why are they cheering us on? Because we're going to hell. And so we arrived at what had been either a school institution or a monastery institutional building, where we had rooms and beds that we could sleep at or on, and took up guard posts around the quarters where we were, on the outskirts of the city of Aachen in Germany, a town called Kohlscheid. And I could, at midnight, this was New Year's Eve, just before midnight, I could hear Germans singing Silent Night, Heilige Nacht, Stille Nacht, and so on. And me wondering, with my carbine rifle there, is this it? This must be it. I mean, I'm really at war now, and I hope they keep celebrating all night. So.
Hold up just a sec. All right.
Now, let me ask you, are you counting on the rest of the career fitting on this?
I'm hoping, but let's see. I'm also worried, it's not so much tape as it is I'm worried about the whole lighting conditions.
Oh, okay. Well, I think maybe the anecdotes ought to wait for some future time,
Okay.
or really be written up in book form.
We're halfway through this tape.
Okay. In the early days of our active campaign, now this is the Battle of the Bulge. It's called Ardennes, the Ardennes campaign. Ardennes is the overall name of the forest area there in that part of France, Belgium. And we really were put in the hands of an outfit that was there before, a similar outfit, Observation Battalion, that was there before we were. And because I was a computer in our operation, I was always fairly stable, would be at a spot, and the others would be transitory in that spot. And I don't mean for days, I mean for hours of the day, see. But after all, I did work as an observer too, see. I mean, all of us drew turns as actual observers. But here I got to meet these guys from this other outfit, and just knowing that these guys had been in operation for a while, I think put us more at ease. I mean, after all, they're still here, at least some of them. And I remember talking with one guy about the fact that he, or a member of his group, had shot a deer. And they managed to use that deer for food too, I think. And I said, well, gee, what did you do with the hide? And I said, that could be helpful too. And he said, well, you know, you have to know how to cure it, and you have to have the time to cure it. You have to have salt to rub on the meat side, and this and that. And at any rate, I wound up with the deer hide, but I never had any first-hand experience or anything like that. And eventually, I think I had to turn it over to someone else. This put us in a locality, I think, near Düren, Germany, D-U-R-E-N. Many years later, it seemed, 1953, Kay and I were driving back through that part of Europe, back to Holland, where I had had a Fulbright, and we had taken a long motor trip through much of Europe. Western Europe and Italy and so on. And we were heading back, and we went right by and through Düren. And I realized that you can't go back again, to use somebody else's title, a slogan there. But it's always felt like, well, I would like to go back to see these places, but they won't be the same. They wouldn't be the same. Okay, so what happened after that? Eventually, we wound up on our own, meaning the 291st FOB. We were told that the group, I think they were the 285th FOB, the group that had been massacred at Malmedy, which I guess is Belgium, actually, during the battle, the initial part of the Battle of the Bulge, we were going to take over their positions. And I remember we were going out to find these locations. We were going to a town called Lammersdorf in Germany. And our convoy had stopped on this snowy road in a very quiet pastoral part of the country. And here comes a family group, a father, a mother, middle-aged, and a daughter about our age. And we're in our trucks, open bed trucks, waiting to move on again, and they come and pass us, and they looked at us with a terrible look on their faces, like we're really hated and cursed, and after all, we're Americans. And we couldn't understand that. We thought everybody in Europe was going to welcome us with the way the people in Charleroi did, with cognac and cheering us on. And then we realized, well, maybe we're not in Belgium. And so we called down to them, hey, is this Belgium? Is this Belgium? And they said, maybe are you Belgians? And the girl said, no, we are germs. And we said, hooray, we found it. So from there on, we went to Lammersdorf, and our headquarters was set up in a small industrial building, more like a shop, a big shop of some kind. Maybe they worked on wagons and so on. And it was stone, and it looked very, very protective. But wouldn't you know, the Germans laid some, I don't know if they were mortar rounds into us or 88 millimeter shells. And we were lucky to escape those things. I was not so lucky, I felt, because even though the headquarters now, our headquarters had been shelled already, I was taken out to a German bunker along with a couple other guys from our outfit. And it was nothing more than a structure that had been dug into a rise in the ground. And maybe this had all been actually developed, because we were in a territory now that had the Siegfried Line through it. And maybe you know that there are these pictures of what they called the dragon's teeth. These were concrete, they looked like very three-dimensional tombstones, and they were staggered somewhat, open and closed rows of them, and they were supposed to stop tanks. But then there were also the bunkers that were supposed to be protective places for the German troops, and they could shoot machine guns out of them, and maybe even some lighter kinds of artillery. So here was, I'll try to describe this vertically. You go into this concrete piece of wall that is blended into ground that rises up above the top of it, although there's a little roof structure from the open side, at the open side of the bunker. And the bunker has a door, metal, bulletproof doors, and these narrow openings out of which to look or aim weapons. And inside there was nothing other than a 2 or 3 tiered bunk. It's a pipe frame bunk with, again, netting forming the base where the mattress or the blankets would go. Okay, and that was it. And I thought, well, it won't be too bad. There'll be a few of us here, and we can help each other, and we can take turns getting some sleep and staying awake, and so on. As it turned out, there weren't 2 or 3 of us. It was me, period. I was left there. And I think it might have been more than one night. And that set up a process in my feeling and thinking that I may well be dead the next day because it's only me there. And the bunker was no protection. You couldn't close those metal doors. They had been hit or damaged, or the snow and ice, whatever it was, prevented them from being closed. What do I do there? Well, I must observe. Now, it isn't as though I'm looking out on open fields. It's all enclosed in woods. And what good is this bunker for me? I'm supposed to be observing things. I have a telephone line. And perhaps I had a radio line, but I don't think so. I think I just had a telephone line back to headquarters at the factory or shop in Lammersdorf, a few miles away. Not many, but a few miles away. And sure enough, the cot, I got on it to sleep, and the netting broke, clear down to the bottom level. Whether the bottom level held or not, I don't know, but for all general description purposes, I was sleeping on the concrete floor. How am I going to be of some use and value to the rest of everything that's going on here? I don't know. I don't really have any instructions or anything. If you hear something, Roth, in the distance there where the Germans are, and you think you can pin it down in terms of azimuth, compass direction, and distance, give us a call. Okay, I'll give you a call sometime. And they're off, and I'm there. So I have a picture that I can show you that I'm quite certain is me. Because I've shown the picture to the other smallest living guy from our outfit, and asked him if it was him. And he said, no, it definitely is not him. And I don't think he ever got out of headquarters work. All right, I hear firing from a distance, and it's going toward Lammersdorf, where the factory is. I can tell because I know the map and I know the angle. I have a compass, and I call it in. And I find I like this. It's daytime. It's very peaceful in the forest. It's quiet. But I'm standing there at a perfect target. Everything else is white snow behind you. So I'm standing there, and I'm saying such and such an angle or azimuth, and so many. Now how can I guess how distant? Well, I've had some training in judging distances, but where? In Georgia, in South Carolina, on an assignment to what is major army fort there. And I say, well, I think it may be a mile away. I think it may be a half mile away, and so on. And I think that the line of their fire may be aiming right towards Lammersdorf. And that's when those shells were landing on that building there. And they said, thanks, that's the information we need. We need that information, keep it coming. And I did. And they reported it, and they told me that outfit was wiped out. They were silenced, you know. Never heard anything from them again because they called in for action there. Eventually, my lieutenant came and picked me up, and I was out there with another very close friend of mine, Sergeant Willie Williams from Baltimore. And we were really, I would say, the two closest friends during the rest of the campaigns. And in that same area, as it turned out, we had guys in other parts of that area too. But as it turned out, Willie and I wound up there on our own. And we had a pleasant day. The way you get occasionally a day or two in a winter, and the weather is sunny and warm. Excuse me, and there's no wind. And it's just remarkable. And Willie and I, we had to do something, go from one point to another, measuring the distance or estimating the distance. And you can, well, I guess a lot of people went crazy during the war by imagination and fantasy, you know?
Right.
Oh, your phone?
Yeah, it's all right.
Oh. And now I really don't know how far away we were from that bunker, but we were in a part of that forested area that you could actually see some of the grasses or the growth that had been covered by snow. We were so warm from, after all, we were wearing our warm clothes. We had woolen shirts, we had woolen sweaters, we had a field jacket, and we had to work our way up through snow and grass and things, up on a hill there for some reason, and it had trees, a hillock, I should say, a hillock. It was an elevated area. And we had some K rations with us, and we had our canteens with our water. And we're feeling so good, we're opening up our field jacket, we're taking off our sweater, we're opening up our shirt. It was like midday. And we work our way up that hillock, and we sit under the trees, and it's like a picnic for us. We open our K ration, we have a piece of American cheese in there, we had hardtack crackers, and we have our water. But as we're doing this, we're calling each other Hans and Fritz. See, this is our way to make fun of things, you know. Here we are in Germany, you know, and where's the enemy? So we'll be Hans and Fritz. And we're calling out to each other, hey, Hans, you're going to race me up the hill. And hey, friend, Fritz, you want to eat your K ration now? And we do that. And we get up to the bottom of some trees where we can lean back and look out over this beautiful setting with the sunshine and the snow and the trees. And we're eating our K rations, and pow, 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 rifle shots. Now that I think back on it, I don't think these were American carbine shots. That's 30 millimeter, but it's not as powerful as the M1 Garand, which was our typical infantry rifle at the time. I was glad not to carry a Garand because it's much heavier than the carbine. And the carbine's quicker and easier to handle, but it's no good over 100 yards for accuracy. And these shots are hitting the trees, right, that we're leaning against, and not very far above them. And I still can't say whether they were Germans shooting at us or GIs figuring we've had our fun, now they're going to have their fun. Because they could have hit us, but maybe the inclination of the ground was such that if you raise your rifle that much, you're going to miss everything until you're up 10 feet above level out there, you know. And it was just a weird thing that happened to us. I don't remember how or when or where we got picked up again, but after we finished whatever our task was, it may have been to keep going on to some other meeting point, and it probably was.
Now, you did receive the Bronze Star.
Yeah. And I did not receive it for the work I did that helped the Lammersdorf installation. There, as I say, there are a number of things. Well, let me take this opportunity to explain what I think. There are a number of things that I did that I think I should have been commended for. I mean, a guy in our outfit, a hillbilly, and a dummy, really. He got a Silver Star. There was only one guy I knew of who wasn't a commissioned officer who got a Silver Star, because after our truck blew up, Willie had been driving it, Willie Williams, and I and another guy who were computers got off the truck while Willie went ahead. He had to go ahead to lay out more points that our surveyors should take when they came along after us. He hit a mine, and it blew up the front of the truck, blew the engine out of the truck, blew the wheel off that hit it, and blew Willie out of the truck, and he hurt his ankle by the pedals being blown out of it. And this other guy, whose name I can't remember right now, he and I was in charge, he was under me, and I said, hey, come on, Willie said he's going to meet us up there, and we just heard that explosion there. I don't remember if we saw smoke or anything, but we heard that explosion up there, and let's go up there that way. We're supposed to meet Willie there. That's where we're supposed to meet Willie. And we're walking along the road, and we're passing houses, vacated, you know, farm area, but houses along that road, and they're occupied by British troops. And all of a sudden, we see Willie coming toward us along this road. And he's staggering, see, like this. Now, it wasn't very long before that when he dropped us off at our last place where I and this other guy could sit and do our computations on the ground. Well, he had been at that place, and we went over there, and there was Willie lying on the ground. This was before we saw him after that explosion. And what is it? We had been dropped off by another truck, see? And we go over to where Willie is supposed to be, and we see him lying there on the ground. And he's got one leg tucked up under him, and the other leg stretched out. And he's like that. And we say, hey, Willie, get up, will you? We're here. Come on, we've got things to do. What are you lying down there for? He said, don't you know I was killed? I was killed, and my leg was blown off. See, he was supposed to be frightening us. I said, yeah, okay, we see that. Let's go. And it wasn't very long after that. And I'll tell you that not very long after what I'm describing, or before, we had to walk across a field there, and none of us wanted to be first. So our lieutenant, who was really the most awkward-looking guy, and the sort of the most selfie-facing guy, he just took his stuff and he walked across the field. He said, now you guys can follow me. And we did. We walked across the field, and maybe it wasn't so heavily mined after all. Maybe it wasn't mined at all, but we understood that it was supposedly mined. And okay, but to get back on the road where we were walking toward Willie, and he's coming toward us, putting on this other routine. See, like he heard the explosion, certainly, and maybe he's acting now like he was exploded. Well, he was. And we said, what happened? And he said, I hit a mine. I hit a mine, I got blown out of the truck, and I did hurt my ankle when I went. See, they had a mounted wheel on the driver's side. We had to get in and out of that truck up front, or a Jeep. No, it was a truck. And I don't know if his foot hit that, or his foot got hit by the pedals, more like it. And that was it. So we went to the house and knocked on the door, and some of the Brits were in there. And we said, we're sorry, but we wondered, do you have some, it wasn't torn and lacerated, I don't think so, but it did need a bandage on it to help stiffen it. And they not only had stuff, but they gave us tea, hot tea, and they, one guy bandaged up Willie's legs so that it would provide support there. And then we said thanks eventually, and we left, and we helped Willie, and we went along the road, and we went up to that place. Now, why did I tell you about all this? When the rest of our outfit caught up with itself, they, for whatever reason I cannot imagine, this guy from West Virginia, this hillbilly guy, we take turns guarding. Whenever there's a whole outfit, you set out a guard at night, see? You take turns guarding, so in case somebody's getting ready to attack you or you are attacked, you have that warning. This guy just went and sat out there at the truck. It was useless. He sat there that night, and I don't know if he was asked to do that or he just did it. And he was awarded the Silver Star for that. He didn't do anything. There was no action. There were troops around. There were the British troops right down there off that road. That's why we were affected by a mine. We weren't shot on by...
So how did you, what did you do, or was there any specific action?
Oh, what they awarded me? Yeah. Well, that'll take some time.
We've got 6 minutes on this tape.
I think I should be able to do it in 6 minutes. There was a time, this is much later on, and we had to get some surveying done. So we had a survey team, and a few of us, well, like this other guy who assisted me and me, I was the computer guy, and we had a couple more guys, drivers for the vehicles. So the guy who was handling the surveying instrument, his name was Gelman, Irv, I think, Irv Gelman. And he was way out somewhere there, miles away. We thought, well, not miles necessarily, but some good distance away. We were taking shelter by parking near a car, parking the truck near a house. And that would keep us out of sight from the Germans, as we understood where they were, and we never had a very clear understanding where they were. It was their country. They're moving around all the time at ease. Maybe not at ease, but they had the ability to move and take refuge and everything everywhere, and probably knew the area very well. And my purpose, my particular guys with our truck and our drivers and other guys who handle the wires and things. And I guess we dropped Gelman and his people. They had one or two people working with him, the guys who handle the chains, to measure measure the distances and so on. I think all he had to do really was not to do a complete survey, but to just take some readings there that were necessary. All right, we get to this place. Gelman's up there and somebody else up there with him too, one or two guys maybe. And in this house, I didn't even go in the house, but one of our guys goes in the house and he finds out there's a woman there, an older woman and a younger woman, and there's the father of the family. He's dead and he's laid out in there, is civilian. And I never went to see the father dead, laid out. I'm not convinced that that was true even, that they may have been hiding somebody in the house. But I didn't see where we were needed in the house, besides which we came under fire. We came under fire almost immediately. Whether they were, see, I'm losing a lot of terminology here, but it's very simple terminology, but I think I'm probably running out of stamina. Mortar fire. Whether they were mortar shells or whether they were 88s being fired in our direction, I'm not sure. They didn't hit the house. I guess they didn't want to hit the house where German civilians were, and they must have known that. And it may be that somebody was in that house calling out directions over the radio to them, for all we know. But I didn't want to go in the house. How do I know there weren't German troops in there? If they tell us that somebody's dead in there, meaning that they want privacy, let it be. Nobody has shot at us from the house. But when these rounds started coming in, and the guys didn't know what to do, where to go. What do I know where to do, what to go? If you go to the vehicles, then, all right, that may help you get out of there quickly. What happens to Gelman, who's working his way up here where we are, or down here where we are? He was a little more elevated. And I say, let's go into this manhole. I looked in the manhole, you know, there was a manhole cover on it, and all it was a place where there was a big juncture of big pipes. And that was for maybe meter readings or access. So we went down there and we spent time there, and every time the firing let up, we took a cautious look and this and that. We finally got out of there. I said, look, we ate our lunch while we were down there, and so on. So it was time used to advantage. Now, Gelman should be approaching us pretty soon. And sure enough, the firing starts up again. We're taking cover behind the house. We look out. Here's this road coming. And Gelman's running with his transit folded up and over his shoulder. And they are firing, not mortar. I mean, you can tell mortar, the shell goes when it makes that whistle when it lands. It drops like that. But 88s, that was the famous German 88, which was their best weapon. It was a tank weapon, an anti-aircraft weapon, and then it was made into everything else, anti-tank, anti-personnel. And they were firing at Gelman, and he's running, and these shells are landing. We can see them behind him, and he's running with his transit over his shoulder, and he finally gets there, and I had it all figured out just how we would pile the guys in their vehicles and get out of there in a hurry and get back to our headquarters where we had to report our information, the survey and so on. And that's what I got the bronze medal for. But there are other instances where I had to hold up surveying rods and do it while they were firing 88s at us. And After we had been with members of the 8th Field Artillery Observation Battalion for a couple days for them to help us get our feet on the ground, as it were, then we were assigned to a town called Lammersdorf, where there was a small industrial building, a building for industry, which would house our own unit's headquarters. It was some distance out from Lammersdorf. A few of us were taken out to positions that we would hold as observers, field artillery observers, and one spot was an actual bunker that was part of what the Germans called their Siegfried Line, that line that was supposed to stop any penetration of German soil. I was kind of surprised when I was left alone at the bunker, and the other members of our outfit proceeded on to other locations, or maybe back to Lammersdorf. And then my assignment was to just stay at the bunker and keep in touch with headquarters through a telephone line that I had, and report any kind of artillery action, whether it was German or American, and call that in back to our headquarters so they could activate the observation data into actual triangulation of locations of German artillery and so forth. So I was kind of shocked and frightened to know that I was going to be there alone, and that I really would have no means of escape, because I would be on foot. It was fairly deep snow there in the forested area, and I just had a very general idea of the direction back to our headquarters. But there was no real safety at the bunker, because these heavy metal doors had been sprung, and you couldn't close them. There was nothing inside the bunker space except it was either 2 or 3 tiered cot arrangement, like bunk beds, very fitting for being in a bunker. And they consisted of a steel pipe frame and some fabric netting, looked like heavy yarn, and that was what I had to sleep on. So when I got up the second or third highest level, and at night to try to catch some sleep, I found that in a little while I fell right through this netting, which was shot, more than half shot. I don't mean by weapons firing, but by wetness and drying and freezing and all that stuff. So I put myself on a very strict attention to the details I was to follow, and when I did hear artillery fire, I called it into our headquarters. I located it by azimuth, that is to say, so many degrees east of north or west of north, and estimated the distance, which was difficult for me because I had no experience, no field experience under similar conditions in our training back in Georgia. We had no forests, heavy forests like that. We had no 1.5 feet of snow, but I did what I could. And eventually, I learned that I had spotted German artillery that was firing at our own headquarters, and could have killed a number of our members, except most were out of the headquarters at that time, working on various parts of our functions in the field. So within a day or two, the lieutenant, our own immediate commander, showed up, and when he left, I was off the bunker assignment, and a good friend of mine and a very close associate in our operations, Willie Williams from Baltimore. He was a sergeant by that time, and I was an ex-corporal. And we found ourselves doing various tasks, just the two of us, getting measurements and pacing off distances, and having to go from one part of the forest to another. And there was a very mild, sunny, and relatively very warm day. We had to get through some snow and go up a slight hill. And we felt so good about everything, about still being alive and enjoying a day's weather for a change, that we were taking our jackets, field jackets off, and unbuttoning our shirt collar necks, and throwing snowballs at each other as we worked our way up the hill, and shouting to each other under pseudonyms, foolishly chosen, Hans and Fritz. And we made some noise, I imagine, because when we sat down, once we got up that little hill at the base of some fine, straight trees, and started to eat our K-rations that we had with us, we were fired on by rifle fire, and the bullets landed very close to us. They hit the tree trunks upon which we were leaning several feet below. We managed to scramble, finish our K-rations, and get on with whatever it was we were doing that day. I don't really recall the details, but we got out of there, and we got out okay. So that was the sort of thing that happened at the Lammersdorf location. I think I mentioned earlier, perhaps, a little anecdote, the fact that we weren't sure whether we were in Germany or Belgium. Lammersdorf is just inside Germany, and while we were getting together with other members of our group in our open trucks, we saw a middle-aged couple and a young girl, obviously we concluded their daughter, and they were walking toward us. They're in overcoats, bundled up, and not smiling at all. And when they came closer, some of us called out to them, is this Belgium? Are you Belgians, or is this Germany? And the girl, giving us a really sour, bitter look, staring at us and saying, "No, we are germs." And then we applauded and said that you hit it right on the button. Okay, we're in the land of the germs. Here we are. In that land, we understood that we were taking over the positions that had formerly been used by the 285th Field Artillery Observation Battalion, some of whom, over 100 I think the number was, were massacred at a town in Belgium, just inside Belgium, not far from there, called Malmedy. And that's in all the history books dealing with the Battle of the Bulge. I was on a small team assigned to a spot right in the middle of the Dragon's Teeth, so-called concrete stumps built there that were supposed to keep our tanks from being able to enter German territory. We were taken out to a farmhouse. Well, there were a couple farmhouses at the spot, and we were told it was a town called Bickerath. And we were not far from another town, or maybe they were just road crossings, but they had towns' names. Another one called Simmerath. Maybe it was the other way around. We were in Simmerath, and that was Bickerath. But you had to try to picture this. Here was a very nice country road coming along through this cleared area, no longer in the trees, in the forests. And on in our line of our direction that we had traveled in along this road, there was a farmhouse on our right, just off the road, and it looked as though it had been hit pretty well by some kind of artillery or maybe even aerial bombing, and half of it was gone. The half that was closest to the barn part of it. And on the other side, on our left, just directly opposite on that road, was a pretty substantial, relatively modern farmhouse that did not have any connection with a barn or anything like that. But that too had been hit and partially destroyed. We went into the first one I described, and there were a few fellows from some U.S. outfit who had been holed up in the place, and they explained that we were not far from the enemy. They were only maybe a fraction, and a small fraction at that, fraction of a mile away from us, but they couldn't be seen, and they knew we were in the house. So those other GIs left, and we took over this spot. And we were supposed to do our thing there, call in any firing or shelling, and give that information to our headquarters so that they could find the locations of the German artillery or troops. Well, we were pretty well hidden by piled up snow and deep snow. In order to, there were no toilet facilities for us, of course. In order for us to go to toilet, we had to get out of the house, and as though it were trench warfare, there was a path with snow banked 3-4 feet high on either side that took us out within a distance of maybe 10 or 15 yards at the most from the house itself. We could scoot out to a fairly large chicken house. I'll call it a house because it was maybe 5 feet by 10 feet, and it had a straddle trench, a slit trench that was for us to use as a toilet. That the previous GIs had dug this thing, and it was in this big chicken coop. Now, facing the enemy, that wall was almost transparent to a certain degree. It had insect netting across it, and I'm not sure, but it may have been from a cotton or other fiber type material, but you could see through it. And of course they couldn't see us very well because there was a sill effect, but still the sill was quite low. And when you were squatting there, straddling the trench and doing your business, you could look out on this beautiful little piece of landscape, looked like a Christmas card, except there was a wrecked Sherman, U.S. Sherman tank about, I would say about no more than 20 yards from the squatter in the coop. And the very first time I went out there, and I thought I had scooted into the toilet space, the chicken coop, and was doing my business, which was number 2, a machine gun opened and punched holes right through that fabric, where if I had been standing, it would have been just too bad. And I knew better than to jump up. I gathered my belt in one hand, my carbine in the other, and squatting still, ran out of the coop and through the zigzag of between the snow walls and got back into the house. And when I told the guys about it, the guys who were leaving, they said, yeah, that's life here. And I thought, life or death. As a matter of fact, even before that occurrence, when I first went out of that house, what I did before even going to the toilet was to try to get a bearing on where they had described they think the enemy were located in their positions. And so I was using a handheld compass, and in order to get the compass to function correctly, I took off my helmet, which of course was steel, and threw it down aside in the snow. And here I was taking readings, and I was fully exposed by the road that I had described, when here comes a round of, I imagine from an 88, a round of artillery. And of course I heard it come in, and I saw it land just yards away, and it didn't explode. And so it was a dud. And I grabbed my helmet and got back into the house. So that was, maybe that's what caused me to have to go to the toilet. But and I'll go just a little more, and I don't want to, spend forever on this spot. But this is the beginning, you see. This is the kind of action we had and the kind of role we played. In other words, we never shot anything at anybody. We didn't have anything heavier than our .30 caliber rifles. And while I was at that place, I would have to go up to in a loft in the barn, what remained of the barn, and we had a telescope set up there, a spotting scope, and I could look and I could see the Germans going through their little snow wall protection and setting up their machine gun. And then when the machine gun opened up, I guess they knew we were doing the sort of thing I was doing, and maybe they never saw us, but they just figured somebody's up there in that barn looking down for us, and they opened up with the machine gun. And there was a clear opening on that side of the barn at the loft where I was observing through the telescope. But there were also masonry piers, like concrete block piers on either side of this loft, which was maybe 8 to 10 feet above the floor of the barn. And then I would be there with my back against that masonry pier, not able to move really, because those shots would come again and again, and I had no way of knowing what kind of a rhythm they, if any, they might be functioning. Then eventually, after sweating it out that way for a while, I was able to slide, do a back crawl on my back and slide down off the loft and land on the floor and get out of there. But those are the sort of turns we had to take, and I would see these bullets lodging eventually in the other side of the barn. We'd get up in the morning and we go into the kitchen of the house, which was not very far from that chicken coop, and we'd get some hot coffee that a couple of the guys had cooked up, and maybe something else they'd heated up to eat, when all of a sudden rifle fire would come through the kitchen window. And so I experienced the bullets whizzing right by and missing me, and feeling quite fortunate. We left that house eventually and went to that better house across the street that was newer, was stronger, and it had a reinforced concrete floor for the first floor over a cellar area, and we made that the base of our operations. But let me tell you that, how did we leave? We were being shelled in the old house where we slept on the floor, one room back from the kitchen, giving us a little more protection from at least rifle fire or machine gun fire. But they were shelling us, and they were coming in fairly close. I could sleep through anything at that stage of my life, whether it was in Germany at war or in Philadelphia at peace. And my buddies shook me and said, "We're cutting out." It was the middle of the night. They said, "We won't make it here. We're going to that house across the road. Come on, come on." And I said, "No, I'm sleeping, I'm staying. I'll be there tomorrow." And they said, "The hell you will." And they left. And the next morning I went over to the house. So